right, I want to welcome you into the Idea Collision here, my first podcast. And you can find this, I'm not sure how you're listening, watching, but you can find this on most of your podcasting locations, iTunes and all that. We also will have a video podcast of this at the Waukesha Church of Christ YouTube channel. And some of our links are posted there as well that we'll be going through as we do this. My name is Andrew Green, and just because this is our first time together, I'd like to give just a brief bio. I've been in Waukesha Church of Christ as the minister here for about 7 years. And if you are not in the area and you're thinking that sounds familiar, it's the Waukesha, the same Waukesha, Wisconsin that had an incident which you've heard about in the news probably about a year ago, and then watched the trial likely around the parade events that happened here. And when that happened about a year ago, our church got involved in a program called Healing Hearts, which is a grief ministry. It's not counseling, but I do encourage you to click our link if you do struggle with grief. That is one of the things that I get involved with as a facilitator. Prior to being here in Waukesha, I was a minister in a overseas church in Ukraine, in the city of Nikopol. And if you think you've heard of that as well, then you likely have heard of that. That is the city that is directly across from the nuclear power plant, where of great interest that Russia has occupied for pretty close to 3/4 of a year now. So I've been in some places that have some notorious surroundings, although certainly Nikopol wasn't that notorious when we were there. That kind of sums up. I'm really don't want to spend much time on me personally, but I do want to get into this podcast. And one of the first things, as I thought about what to do as a podcast, I wanted to describe maybe particularly how to listen. And again, very briefly, when I get in my car, I have about 11-minute commute to church here where my office is. And someone somewhere is, I'm fairly sure they're watching me get into my car, because as soon as I get into my car, there's like 3 or 4 listenable stations in our area, at least for my tastes, and they all go to commercial. Or they're in commercial as soon as I'm in the car, and I get about 10 minutes and 30 seconds of commercials until I hear a good song as I'm pulling into the parking lot. But on the way to and from, this happens both directions, what I do hear is a lot of podcast advertisements, and the ones I get the most of, and I don't know why, but these are true crime podcasts. And so they hook you, and they're telling you all about these crazy stories about things that happen, but they lose me every time. Almost all of them lose me. I don't think I've ever listened to a single true crime podcast, because at the end of it, they all say the same thing. They all say, and no one knows how they did it, or they were never caught. Well, I'm not interested in that. It's important for me to know how I listen. I want to hear the rest of the story. I want to hear, and they got them idiots and they're in jail now. That's what I want to hear. So I'm not interested. So I want to kind of get into how to listen to this podcast. We're going to be talking about various ideas, culturally, socially, historically, philosophically, all sorts of different things that we'll get into, but with a practical purpose. There's an end. There's an end to the story. It's not just open-ended. That was a nice, crazy trip through some philosophy. This is also important. Depending on who you are, you might be coming to this from a religious perspective or background. This is not going to be like let's look at this 20-verse section of verses and let's delve into all the intricacies. This is really a podcast anybody, I think, can get something from, but some of the material is even material I use in my sermons. But what it is I want to give something that can interest people from all backgrounds. and not in a wide shotgun approach, but a thought, something that can improve our lives. And a lot of these are things that may be counterintuitive, things that we don't think of necessarily for as spiritual, but things that have a spiritual impact. That said, I want to get into, and I thought a lot about what my first show would be, and what would I do to sum up what the show is going to be. And I want to talk about information today. Solomon writes in his book of Ecclesiastes, it's a book of wisdom, and he's reflecting on his life and various things, and so he writes down what he thinks about wisdom and various topics, and as he's concluding this book, this is what he tells his son. He says the writing of books it's endless, and it's the net result of it is a lot of weariness to your body, and I think that's true. Maybe if Solomon lived today, he would say, the making of podcasts is endless and it's basically really exhausting. I don't know, something to that effect. But I want to talk about information, and it's a little ironic, I think, for Solomon, because the Ecclesiastes and his other book, a book of Proverbs, are books of wisdom, and here he is almost downplaying wisdom as he's in a book of wisdom. But we do live in an information age. That's been said. Certainly that's been observed, and it's increased. Now I'm about 50 years old. I remember getting a daily newspaper. I remember delivering a daily newspaper. And if you didn't get a day-old news in print, you got 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock. You got an hour at 6 and an hour at 10 to get your news, both nationally and locally. And that was it. I would say probably cable news, it existed, but it didn't really get off the ground, I think, until probably the late 80s. It was 88 or 89 somewhere when Tiananmen Square happened. And probably that is the event that brought CNN really, CNN existed, but it really launched, I think, CNN in their coverage of that event. And so then it wasn't too long until the internet came out, and it was, again, it already existed, but it started replacing the news, and we got more and more cable news coverage, and we had you could get your news all day long, and so why would you wait a day to get outdated? Well, it didn't take much longer. The early 2000s. Social media gets created. That's another way that you can get daily news, and then these little devices come out and apps. As now we can get, not just go searching for it, but now we're in a state where informationally I can set alerts if I wanted to, and even specific types of news or specific mentions of things. I can have a buzzer go off. And I can look at this device and tell me exactly that 30 seconds somewhere on the other side of the world something happened that's really important to me. And I'm not saying that's all a bad thing, but it certainly changed. It's certainly dramatically a different world than the 80s where I grew up. And the assumption is, here's the assumption of all this, that this makes life better. Well, certainly access to information can improve your life. But there's also an assumption that this makes things better. That my life is better because, and specifically that I'm happier because I have all this information. Well, information does improve my life. But as this has happened, one of the things that I've noticed is that all information has been politicized, and this is not if the hair on the back of your neck just stood up. This is not going to be a political podcast. This is not about my political views or whatever. I really want to stay away from that because there are 8 million political podcasts that you can listen to. That's not what this is. But sometimes the political arena serves as an illustration for things. So on occasion we'll dip our toe into that. But one of the things that this information has really politicized everything, and the reason that this is pertinent to this podcast, and especially today's, is that this is where we get into this idea of has it made my life happier? And you look at people who have access to all this information. We know everything that all these people are doing and saying, and we can debate back and forth. And is it making anybody's life happier? I mean, you go back 20 years. Can you imagine? I can't imagine two people getting a divorce over, I really, that Walter Mondale guy, that Ronald Reagan guy, like that's not a thing that ever happened. But we have divorces and marriages ending. We have people that have to Google, and this is like a Google search, how to get along with my in-laws who like so-and-so over Thanksgiving or over Christmas. That's like a real Google search. You can't imagine that, because all of this information has made people have to take positions on everything, and at younger ages too, because all of this information is being bombarded at people at a younger and younger age. It's not making lives happier. You ever hear someone complain? This is a complaint I love. That person or you think you're always right. Well, let's stop and think about that for a second. Because every one of us thinks we're always right. I think I'm always right. Who has an opinion? Who says, and I have this opinion or I have this belief, but I'm fairly sure I'm wrong? No one says that. If we say, do you believe this? Yes. Do you think you're right? Of course I do. Every one of those beliefs, one after another, I'm going to say, I think I'm right. So we all think we're right about everything. But that's been people forever. But yet we're less and less and less happy. It takes less and less for us to get at each other's throats over opinions. Now, everybody is... there's no one that's wrong about everything. No one. There's no one that's right about everything. We live as though it's a reality that I'm right about everything. I believe everything I'm right, that I believe is right. That's my opinion. But I know it's probably not true. I just don't know which of those things are wrong. And this is the process that I try to come to personally, is getting more and more right about things, and that means acknowledging that I'm wrong about certain things when I'm confronted with that evidence. But it doesn't make a difference now. What you argue, this is the reality. And we argue stupid things. We'll spend an hour arguing about dark meat versus light meat over Thanksgiving. We just argue anything. And we're really sure not only that I'm right, but that there's no possibility that anybody else is right. And even on opinions where we obviously like that can't be right because there are opinions. And we argue everything, and yet we're not happy.
Die Hard is not a Christmas movie.
Even when we are proven right. And that's the kicker. Even when I am proven right, thank you, Bruce, I feel validated. I feel validated because that's my view. I've always felt that. But I'm still not happy. Oh, I'm validated. I got a feeling of a temporary triumph, that feels good. But I'm not happy. You know why? Because there's still going to be people out there, and I know, and I'm going to encounter them, that will disagree with something that maybe I've proven. I can prove something to you. I have the information. But I prove it, I state it, and they still disagree with me. And now I lose that feeling of validation because I feel everybody needs to agree with me. We all need to agree. Here's the information. We put it in, and we've all got to agree. But there's so there's really no happiness. We've multiplied exponentially the amount of information that we have. You can't imagine, if you are under a certain age, you can't imagine what it was like to do a book report. I mean, even if you didn't have Wikipedia, a lot of places, colleges will say you can't use Wikipedia as a source. Excuse me. But okay, get rid of Wikipedia. You know how there's still such a wealth of information. Book reports, man, going to the library, checking out 20 books and read. Oh my goodness, that was awful. We have access to so much information, but we are less happier than we've ever been as a people, as a country, as a world. And so we have to relook at our assumption that information makes us happy. I'm not saying information is pointless, but what Solomon said is absolutely true. We obviously want to try to correct views that we have. As I said, that's my own goal. But just understand the expectation. It's not going to make you happy. It's just going to make you exhausted. So if we, as I said, I want to leave you with something practical, and I don't want to leave you with the danger here. And we're going to get into a podcast about this probably in the future at some point. The point is not to say, well, I'm going to get rid of the information that doesn't make me happy. I'm going to surround myself with stuff that I like. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is maybe the arena of information that we're counting on to bring fulfillment to us, we need to avoid that. Not I'm going to avoid everything on this side of the arena because that's what the conclusion that a lot of people have drawn. But maybe I need to step away from the highly politicized stuff, or maybe the arguments on this topic. Maybe I need to get away from those, and understand really that information is not going to make my life better. Maybe I need to get away from the argument of which is better, mashed potatoes or stuffing. Whatever the case may be. Is it worth the argument? Is it worth establishing that I'm right on that particular thing? And hopefully, I can isolate and then eliminate the types of information that cause me stress, that cause distress of any type. And so that's where I want to leave you. And again, I want to, if this is, if you find this interesting, if this helps you in any way, go and look at your life, where you're at today. Go out and watch and pay attention to the next time that you get into a discussion about something, and watch your stress levels as you're interacting with information, and try to eliminate some of that. And if this does help you, I want to do two things. If you could just subscribe to the podcast. And again, you can find it if you'd rather listen, you're in the car. If you like to watch podcasts, whatever, we have both available. Our church has other information. If you are a person that likes more of the verse for study, we have classes and sermons under Waukesha Church of Christ, classes and sermons on podcasts as well. Those are not video; those are audio only. But also, if you think, here's a person that could use that information. I've got my stress levels under control. Okay, good. Do you know somebody that is in stressful situations because of this overwhelming need to be right, this may be a podcast for them to things that we're going to look at in a different way and hopefully address a lot of these different issues. And again, circling back to what I started with, if you know somebody that is grieving, that is a valuable ministry that is available. I know that it's local. Healing Hearts is local here. I do believe that they do Zoom interfaces for people in certain situations, and probably in your own area, if you're watching this from a different city or whatever, different location, you probably have a ministry that addresses grief, and is a very real thing. So I want to thank you for coming into the podcast with me and spending about 20 minutes. And I'm going to probably try to keep it around 20 to 30 minutes each time. So go out and have a good day and try to have less stress.